Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Starcraft 2 World Championship Series Europe Challenger Edition. I'm Nathanius as we get into our loser match for our European Group C, joined by Zombie Grub. How are you feeling? We don't really ever cast together.
No, we haven't cast in like a year and a half.
It's been a long time.
Maybe like 2 years. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's been a long time.
You've been coming out to the circuit events, but I've been hosting over there.
You've been
so-
hosting, doing a fabulous job, by the way.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
you're doing a great job casting.
Oh, I was.
Someone's got to bring the Terran love
Yeah.
to the broadcast. Now that I can't be there and ruin it with my bias. you know?
Exactly. Like me and Maynard get on a cast together, and we're like full Nathanius.
Thank God.
Amazing.
Someone's got to complain about shield batteries and void rays. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
And speaking of, we've got a great match coming up. If you missed it, well, we had a TVT and a PvP, so nothing to complain about there. But now we got two Terran versus Protoss matches coming up. souL going up against DnS, then we'll have Hero Marine against Mana. And of course, there has to be a final match. We don't know who's in it yet, but
Nope.
there'll be that too.
There'll be that too. Yes, thank you, Nathanius.
Lots of great stuff coming up here
Yeah.
at WCS.
Breaking it down every time.
Just try to
possible.
crunch the numbers from a boy in control who's not here right now. And speaking of numbers to crunch, it's going to be a best of 3 coming at you. We're going to start this one off on Dreamcatcher. DnS and souL playing for their lives right now. This elimination match.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it back in the green room, but these guys are like the up-and-comers, the guys that like are trying to topple the other two guys that are here, which of course is Mana and Hero Marine in the upper bracket, winners bracket. I'm still not sure if we're supposed to be, but yeah, they're there. So but we gotta see who is gonna get knocked out here, as we are going into this best of 3. Let's get that up there. In the top left, as the blue Terran, he is souL.
Wind and rain. It's like, is that his clan or is it just a very deep, moving statement? It's hard to tell. His opponent in the bottom right, the red Protoss player, he is DnS.
I feel like Cascade's also a very old school team.
Yeah.
I've seen them for quite some time.
I remember the name that comes to mind when I think of the Cascade team was like Koss when he first went over there. That was a while back.
It worked out so well. Cascade, Cascade.
Yeah, well, I think his handle was literally like Cascade. Like he just combined the two of them. Like that's some real
Tricky.
Yeah. It's like you get signed by Team Liquid and you just like I am Liquid. And you just, there you go. My handle is Liquid Team or something. It's just like there you go.
Exactly.
I got so much passion.
All right, Nate. Now the big question is, which one of us wants to not be Terran biased?
This is not possible. Don't be silly. Look at that probe harassing this poor worker. That SCV is unionized. He doesn't deserve that. All right. So looking at the way that things are shaping up here, what souL has done is nothing really that crazy. I think the probe scout, I love it. DnS is just trying to be aware. Interesting thing to point out, though, Zombie Grub, is that DnS has opted for a later Nexus. He's got the Cybernetics core before it. And this tells me that he wants to put on a bit of pressure, if he can, onto this expansion. That's why that probe is being so annoying. It's not uncommon if you're able to delay that SCV from being able to build the command center for just a little bit. You chrono out that Stalker, you get across the map, and if you build 2, you can deal with the Reaper when it comes into your base, and you try to put that pressure on. We'll see what he's able to get done as souL starts a second barrack, so it looks like from him we're probably going to get a 2-1-1, and it's an Adept, not a Stalker.
Okay. Yeah, this isn't the first time I've seen someone like, and we've also saw, I think last week, Hearthstone went for like double gas with that later Nexus and didn't actually like do a whole lot with it. So we'll see if this does anything besides just, well, take care of the Reaper, which I feel that's the only thing it's going to do. Maybe pair up with, you didn't take second gas though. I was going to say Stargate and 3 Adepts, you know, like 2 Oracle thing has been kind of popular. But I don't know if he's going to do that either. But this Reaper is going to be on the hunt to see exactly that. And it is a Stargate, and he sees it as soon as it's put down, so that's nice.
Great to immediately be able to scout that. That Adept, by the way, still making its way across the command center, very close to finishing now. If that Adept is able to delay it, that is the stuff of Terran nightmares, because you're like, I'm so close. The 2 Marines can kind of bully that away, but that's also a potential supply block. And look at that, just has to take the wrapping off that command center, unfortunately. That's really annoying for souL, being punched in like that the way that he has been. And the Adept, 3 probes lost back home, but the Reaper has been routed for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, 3 probes isn't bad. The supply block isn't that bad either, considering this is just going to literally tap the SCV.
Look at the SCV
No,
that
not
was
the
down.
weakest. No.
Oh, no. Okay.
All right.
He's going to be able to finish that. Oof.
Yeah, so a mild annoyance, but did not end up contributing to very much. And he lost 3 probes, as I was saying, on the backside. But it is going to be that 3 Adept, at least 1 Oracle trying to pair up in the front.
I wonder, yeah, if that Oracle goes straight to the front, that's going to be like ye old Gemini build. He hates me for mentioning this because he does it to me all the time, but apparently he doesn't do it to anybody else because he knows that I hate this build. But you bring those Adepts up the front, and you just send the Oracle there too, and you can just kill all of these Marines.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes this should put the Terran on guard of that trick, but they can't exactly put the Widow Mine down, especially if they only have 1 Widow Mine, which is exactly the case here.
Yeah.
In case the Oracle does go to the main base, right? So it can be tricky. It's slightly... Oh, that was a fresh mule. No! This is just getting SCVs, even without the Oracle help.
DnS getting some good bullying done on our Terran player here to start things off. There we go. There's the Oracle. And I kind of want to see it. Their Marine count's getting a little bit further up. I think they're still split. Okay, the rest of them are coming down now.
There we go.
Probably can't dive on this, not with just 3 Adepts.
Yeah, I think that the key was actually bringing back the rest of the Marines. The Widow Mine would take care of things if it went into the main base. If we're still not in the natural, so once again, just slightly out of position now against the Oracle. Still only 2 SCVs. It's really not so bad. Behind this, we do have DnS going for a decent number of Phoenix and a 3rd base already on location. souL's almost ready to go. He's almost got, actually the medevac should be starting. Well, they should be starting soon, with that stim finished up as well. Actually, this Widow Mine was placed in a pretty cheeky spot, but that Oracle is not taking that bait.
Yeah, good tag. And this is exactly what you want to be doing at this time. Stim is done, so you tag the... Ooh, okay. Well, thankfully it only hits the Phoenix. They can survive that. But you get that tag on the bio, and Stim is done, so you're basically saying, well, if you were going to try to push out and have your medevacs meet you, not happening. By the way, siege tank before medevacs. No medevacs being made yet. I don't like it.
Okay, well, I know your opinion on it. I was wondering about that as well. I mean, he only has a finite number of amount of gas.
It's like he's worried about, like, I think with the way that the game started, I don't think it's like... Because you do sometimes see the Phoenix follow up into, like, you know, Adept Phoenix, but the counter to that is more so walling off your natural than it is getting tanks out.
Yeah, and he also was severely supply blocked, so I don't know if maybe he like messed up the build a little bit, maybe thinking about that last series too much, but it's not the cleanest looking build right now from souL. But we can't take away the power of tank pushes, even though there are a decent number of Phoenix. Actually, I think that's too many Phoenix.
Well, okay. I mean, there's that's what scares me is the lift-ups are a problem. There is a small window here, though, because the commitment for DnS is going to be into +1 attack, resonating glaive adepts. We know that those adepts only 2-shot Marines with that +1 attack, so the chrono boost is going to go in there. But souL has a huge window to go over to this base with his +1 and shut that 3rd down if he can get a good spot with the tanks.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why he prioritized getting those out. But
oh god, no.
DnS wants to just meet him out on the map.
Yeah, well that's certainly a problem. The tanks will unload at the very least, so they'll get some shots off. DPS isn't terrible, but Guardian Shield was involved. The Phoenix focus fire was quite good.
Great focus fire on the Sentry. Yeah, and get the siege tanks. You want to get them by that cliff and siege them up. Super, super important.
This isn't so bad. I really thought that the Adept was going to do a lot more, but it was before all these really key upgrades.
Really, yeah, exactly. Really needs that. The lack of resonating glaives and +1 attack is 100% the reason why DnS is having such a hard time here. And there's the scan. I think maybe you focus down the stasis. Yes, okay, great pick off there for souL. And these Marines just come in. All right, +1 is almost done. Resonating glaives is about to finish. But it's not there yet.
Yeah, +1 still isn't done. This is working out surprisingly well for souL.
3 hits to kill the Marines.
Yeah, the actually Adapts reinforcing just get knocked out along with a couple of probes. +1 is 5 seconds from finishing, but he goes in pretty soon, and not too soon, and also just takes complete tank fires. The Marines simply walk away from the shade, and this has gone very well for souL.
Yeah, and look at that. The Oracle comes behind and backstab the tanks, unsiege, pick up, medevac. Going to protect these units, and that 3rd base getting knocked down like this while the 3rd is being built on location for souL. Fantastic.
Wow.
And I thought that the harass at the start of the game, a bit cheeky by DnS. He didn't really get a whole lot out of it, but seemed to have some sort of flow going on, and souL was just not shaken by it. Prioritizing the tanks over the medevac. I didn't really see it at first, but based on the attack that he was going up against, this worked out beautifully for him. And I guess the layout of this map helps that a lot too.
I wonder if there also was, like, DNS is maybe used to having that a little bit later, so he's used to having at least resonating glaives. So that was the first one to finish, or what? But like that was. I mean, you always make that Adept Shade when you have the upgrades, and it looks comical for the Terran to push out like they did, but without the upgrades, it's exactly what we saw here. It was comical, but in the reverse way, souL now has a substantial lead as he just simply takes out the third Nexus and the army. It wasn't like DNS just gave that up realizing he couldn't take on the army. No, he traded a lot for it. And he is certainly behind, but he's not ready to tap out of this game yet. He's going to try and get some War Prism harassment in, but now we're going to talk about what composition he's left with. He lost his Phoenix, he lost most of his Adepts, so he doesn't have that like scary, like, oh my god, 30, 40 amount yet. And that is all he's really working with, his Resident Glaive Adepts and how many Phoenix? Just the 2.
This leaves me really concerned. We have Widowmine production coming out, but Zombie Grub, +1 armor's coming in for DNS and nothing else. No charge, no robo facility, no dark shrine. He's like, well, I'm just going to build more Resonating Glaive Adepts with 1-1, which are, no, that doesn't, the +1 armor is not going to help the Adepts that much. But there it is, big Adept drop and a warping of Adepts into the main base and basically saying, please come home, Terran. I don't want you to kill me yet.
Well, which is exactly what souL is doing. Even though he scanned the third was in fact put down again, he wants to take care of this, but 10 SCVs go down. He's forced to lift up into the main base to try and take care of this, where DNS has a lot of other units headed towards the third, and is this how souL gets beaten back? He finally takes care of the Adepts here, but the War Prism does live, and his third CC is going to have to be lifted.
This is why at the lower where we build a bunch of missile turrets at the edges of our base.
Yeah, I mean, 2 Widow Mines also would have saved so much headache, like on the edge right here, but I mean, it was certainly a gamble for DNS, and he's still giving away so much army, so there's always that problem with Adepts.
Yeah, and the important thing to keep in mind is that souL still has a better army. Like, DNS is now getting +2 attack, and he's getting Blink, but you're still lacking, like, the really big Zealot play that you can go for with, like, a Templar follow-up. There's still not a great transition out of this. It's mostly just trying to rely on the micro, the sentries, and using these Adepts, but there you have the Liberators being added in now, too. You can't push into that with Gateway units.
Surprisingly, souL is hesitant without the tanks and Liberators, so he's not going to push further. His 2-2 might finish for this upcoming battle, though, and he has a 4CC on location that DNS he didn't see.
And DNS is just warping in Stalkers against a bio army that's supported by Siege tanks, Widow Mines, and Liberators. I mean, the Adept play just didn't work, right? And he's just been floundering pretty much since that fell on its face. I mean, maybe he breaks down these rocks, buys himself another 10 seconds.
Well, that
would crash the rocks onto the Widow Mines.
Yeah, he could do that now. That would be a bad play. But he's trying to wait for Blink and +2, but already taking bad fight, just allowing souL to move in a little bit as those upgrades are done. Now he's a bit of a concave, still with the support of the Liberators and tanks, and now the Widow Mines, they move forward.
A lot of Adepts are going to throw their shades out. That 4th base is done for souL, and the Liberators are going to move up, continuing to siege with the tanks getting a lot of damage in on this. The Adepts are forcing the friendly fire, but it's not enough, and souL is going to take game number 1.
All right, so we were a little hesitant watching that build go, you know, there was a little bit of supply block. The tank was like, you know, a little bit faster than the medevac. So it was a little odd, but it worked out so well. DNS, and he just, overconfidence, I guess. Yeah, your confidence can get thrown off in that early game stage. Like the Adept delaying the natural command center is huge. That's a crucial part of a Terran build, even that 15, 20 seconds, because if you look at the production tab at that moment, he was building like 1 Marine. It's like, that's the last supply I have. And then as soon as the command center finishes, you're like, okay, my SB production's going again. I'm getting the orbital now, which you need to, you know, supply the income for that. And then also the rest of his Marines started production again because he was like, that's just such an important part of it. So I like the early poke. I like the pressure with the probe, but Resonating Glaive +1 Adepts, it's not really a thing we see anymore. Not too much anymore, no. Yeah. I have seen, like, I feel like Trap, he's a Trapper Deer. Sometimes I get those guys confused, to be honest. But, like, he's been doing that more so lately, and it is something that you bring back into the meta because Terrans will be like, whoa, wait a second. Like, people forget about it a bit, yeah. Yeah, but it was just such an anti-timing. It was a perfect timing for souL, who had +1 done CMN combat shields, but it was such a bad timing for DNS, who I guess... I mean, you see that type of army, and you don't realize the upgrades are still, like, you know, off par from each other, and that is usually a fine enough Adept Shade with a Phoenix, but in that case, it was definitely a disaster. So, I mean, that he tried to like, limp along in the game for like the next 10 minutes, and it wasn't a bad idea. The depth sometimes can turn around games. We all remember the beginning of Legacy of the Void.
Yeah, that's true. But the hardest thing is just transitioning out of the depths in this meta is just really difficult. Like, charged zealots we know are good, but when your opponent still has like the liberators and the tanks, like with Widow Mines, the zealots aren't going to necessarily buy you back into the game. You're like, I'm going to try to hold this counterattack, which is still not the worst thing ever because you're trying to get the tanks to splash onto the Marines. But if the Marines have that, because you went for the attack upgrade first, your zealots aren't going to tank at all. So the Marines will kill them before you're not getting those big zealot surrounds that cause the tanks to kill all of the Terran units. So
yeah. I mean, there wasn't much of a game beyond that.
Looking to see something probably a little more standard. It's always interesting what happens, like when the Protoss tries to get that cybernetic score before the Nexus, is you're like, well, I just want that really early tech unit. It, in a weird way, keeps you a bit safer if something weird happens.
True.
But because he probe scouted that early, he knew it wasn't like a proxy. He knew that he was expanding. So just a little bit of DNS trying to do too much there. And we're just waiting for him to ready up.
Yeah.
As we've got our lobby set up, lost and found for the next map.
A Dreamcatcher had that. I think there was also an urgency of DNS to shade onto the Marines, not just because he saw maybe an opportunity. It was like, oh, the tanks are in siege and all that, but also because it's Dreamcatcher and there is that rock wall no matter where you expand.
Yes.
But Lost and Found kind of has that same thing too. I mean, we see races change which expansion they're taking, but if they take the one off to the right, for instance, depending on where DNS spawns, there's also a rock wall there that can be abused. So maybe souL's gonna try the same thing, but I'm pretty certain that DNS will change things up.
Yeah, it's very, very tricky. There's a lot of ways that you can use it on both of these maps, between this one and Dreamcatcher. But on this map, I don't know. I feel like the meta for Terran has shifted to that left side third, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. As we've got in our bottom left position leading the series, 1-0. Our blue Terran player, he is souL.
In the top right, as the red Protoss, he is DNS.
Yeah, I'm curious about that myself in terms of where the players take these bases, as souL is gonna hit him with that uwu proxy Reaper, I would imagine.
Yeah, which DNS is.
I love this, by the way. I never proxied pretty much ever Zombie Grub, and then I watched Maru do it like a week ago.
Wow.
And in that GS subgroup, and I was like, this actually looks so good. It is hard to think of downsides to proxy Reaper versus Protoss if you build the factory at home, especially. Like, you're guaranteed to get a little bit more pressure than the normal Reaper because of how close it is. But then the follow-up is actually quite hard to break as well because the Protoss doesn't invest as much of their chrono boost into probes usually to try and deal with this. And look at that probe went down to the natural, comes back. Is he gonna get the core first?
Yeah.
Zealot. Yep, there we go.
He realized as soon as he went in there, he's like, oh, there's no barracks, there's no supply depot, and then he sighted the two gases. So did have to turn around though, and it is still that awkward, like, well, I'm more prepared than I guess, if I got that Nexus, but it still was one of the later preparations I could still make, so it still kind of sucks. And actually, souL is gonna go ahead and that's bunker block.
That's what I love about this build so much. Watching the way that it impacts like these Terran versus Protoss games, because the Protoss generally expands so much faster than the Terran. Usually the Terran command center starts when the Nexus is close to completing, and then you have to turn it into an orbital. And of course, the chrono boost helps you get those probes out fast. The economic impact of forcing Protoss to go Cybercore and get out these units is tremendous. There's the Stargate booted up.
Yeah.
And I actually feel like this has this situation almost always sets up a better economic position for the Terran against the Protoss than it does just doing a normal Reaper expand, because your command center ends up lining up with that Nexus a lot better with this build.
I do think that, like, the complication, like, it's not like, everyone's going to do one base builds, right? Like, you're making this sound like this should be I've
been seeing a lot of players do it. So I've been asking myself, what advantages come from this if you don't get a bunch of probe kills, and it's just that command center is on the way. If he doesn't die to a big attack, it's going to end up being very close to the Nexus in terms of the timing.
So that wasn't the greatest Reaper harassment. And like to continue on your point, like it also does require a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of skill. There's a lot of situations to read in here as you do mess up the game a little bit more. I mean, there's more possibilities of you just like messing up your mechanics, your macro, because things are more heated. So, I mean, it does take a lot of skill. There's a reason that Maru is the most well-known player for being cheesy and weird playing and whatnot, because he can do everything at once. Apparently, he's simply amazing. But like DnS, he only took so many probe losses. That was only the 2, right? Yeah, it wasn't like they got any before that. So only the 2. Has a Stargate now, which I think Protosses can be comfortable just going for the Stargate. It was weird though because he went for a gateway first. I don't know if that was indecision or he wanted to block the Reaper really bad. I'm not sure which one, but actually going to stall at the command center. Now 2 Cyclones will absolutely wreck the Adept, so it's a good thing that he shaded back home. Yeah. But here's where you have to get that split. souL doesn't have any Marine help. It is just the 2 Cyclones, and I think if you just split 1 Cyclone each base, you're kind of good to go, or just let that command center finish and bring RSVs back up.
Yep, and should be totally fine there. I mean, dropping the Mule down there, that Mule will probably die in this situation. Or you're going to lose SCVs. The next 2 Cyclones are about to come out. There's going to be need to be very careful to land those connections. The Oracle can survive the full blast of 1 Cyclone.
Okay. I went out rather well, and he even got the Mule in the natural, which I thought was going to die as well. I was like, that's...
Yeah, he kept the Mule alive? That's pretty good.
Yeah. So everything is pushed back. DnS ultimately does have the more awkward setup here. I'm going to kill the bunker as well as deal with the Reaper harassment. Yeah. I really thought 2 Reapers are going to get more than 2 probes, though. I really feel like they expect to get 4 if you have 2, and even sometimes, like Maru, he gets 4 with 1 Reaper. So.
Yeah, I think you're like aiming for the 3+. If you can get at least 3 probes, you're feeling a lot better. And of course, the Oracle harass comes back, and that becomes a thing. But with this many Cyclones being built by souL, as DnS, you have to start to be like, well, how do I deal with the follow-up here? Because we're getting to the point where it's going to be a lot to deal with. There is a tech lab on the barracks, so he's going to get his stem behind this. And I love seeing this follow-up because Blink isn't ready yet. There's no charge, which means these Cyclones can bully a lot of the units on the map. But DnS ramping up for what seems to be a push. He's going to walk face first into a bunch of Cyclones.
Yeah, that's 6 Cyclones. I mean, Cyclones can be this weird finicky unit where they've only had 4, for instance. You get a couple, literally 2 Phoenix, and these are complicated, but...
souL is expecting, it seems like souL is expecting the meta third, like every Protoss takes a third after the Stargate build. And he wants to take this fight. I mean, you want to focus down the Oracles, prioritizing those with the Cyclones, and he's going to clean this up. So now DnS is like, okay, but the thing is, DnS has his stem on the way, he has his barracks, he has some Widow Mines.
Ooh, I don't think he saw that. Well, maybe he did. Gonna save the Oracle. Yeah, but he did see the Widow Mine.
Something.
Tank with the Adept. I think there's another one over there.
So 3 Stalkers being warped in at that forward pylon, by the way. Yeah. And that does become concerning. How on the map souL needs to be aware. He's got a bunker and a Marine.
He's over the second one of mine. Not much you can do about it.
Yeah, in this situation, you have to just eat mine shots. There's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, and all these units are now expensive. No more Zealots or Adepts.
So he's like, well, I can't move through this area without giving something up. And oh my goodness, what cheeky little mine. He's gonna burrow himself deep inside that base, and it's like, no, you got nothing here, man. Why don't you warp it home? And there you go, 3 Stalkers. That is not what you want to have to do in this situation. Retargeting, he's retargeting with the mine.
Nice micro, really nice micro.
Being annoying as possible, and that attack on the other side of the map, by the way, is doing nothing this whole time. Now, just finally, DnS is gonna look at that army again, and he's like, ugh, all right, well, I've got the third, start a blink. Don't think I'm gonna be able to kill souL in this situation, and great awareness, great control by souL to hold that back.
Yeah, that bought a lot of time. I like that he still kept his reactor on his factory, because I know there are some other Terrans that they actually swap that off for a barracks immediately. They want that Marine bioproduction, but then they don't have enough to really survive an attack like DnS was doing. Or they even try and go into tanks, which take a lot longer. So he's repaired up all the Cyclones that were low. He's got a bunker to mass repair. He obviously knows the attack was incoming. He scanned, kind of guessing where it was going to be.
And he scans the third, so he knows that that's set up. Other things to point out at this point, we have Blink on the way, +1 attack for the Protoss, which means that souL wants to be aggressive. He wants to be out on the map. He wants to be pushing. He wants to be fighting, trying to end this game earlier than later. It is common to go for the armor upgrades because you want to end up with that Zealot backbone for a powerful gateway army because the Stalkers already do a lot of damage flat. So looking to... In my mind, I see this as very aggressive showing by DnS to get himself set up like this. And with the Robo, it makes me wonder if he's going to see it transition into Colossus or just try to crank out a few Immortals behind this.
He did play with Disruptors against Mana in that PvP. I mean, that was probably a one-shot thing, and I don't think I've seen DNS do Disruptors too much in this matchup. It's pretty rare, but in some ways it has come back. But I would actually guess Colossus before Disruptors here. The second Robo, so where is...
Oh, it was a Prism, and then canceled, so...
Yeah, there was no robotics.
What's it going to be, Snake?
There
Okay, there we
we
go.
go.
Second Robo Bay.
It's a little awkward.
That'll do it. By the way, having the Cyclones alive from the early phase gives you that weird faux map control where you're like, at least for the Oracle, if you can get within range, it's going to die. You're forcing the tags to be on that. Finding this pylon would be nice.
Yeah, it's just barely out of range.
Little Pylo just chilling out there.
Oh, speaking of depot, well, Pylo depot.
I love this. Not enough people do this.
Yeah, it's like the Oracle is gonna waste his energy killing it.
Yeah.
And it's gonna see a Warp Prism, which that's kind of that would be the main focus if you didn't cancel it, I guess. And I guess you will eventually get one again. It's not a bad thing that you're trying to scout out for it. The fourth base was scouted by souL's Marines, so things have truly calmed down since the beginning, first 4 or 5 minutes. The pylon is scouted. That's going to be where taken out, but maybe a little bit later.
This is tense. Big push out coming from souL, and we have 2 Colossi on the way.
Oops.
Charges coming in, +1 armor's coming in, but none of these things are ready yet. And most importantly, Zombie Grub, we do not have extended thermal lance even started. So those Colossi are going to be very short-range boys, and they're going to have a hard time connecting those shots. Meanwhile, Fusion Core back home. So here's where we see those +1 Stalkers trying to go in on these Cyclones.
Yeah, I think he just thought it was just the Cyclones, but he lost track of the army a little bit without the revelation. So things a little awkward, but force fields do come down. Hop pickup on the front units, just the Cyclones, I believe it was.
No fourth for you.
Yeah, but a quick cancel. You have to give that up for now as your upgrades are finishing, because you're waiting on these 2 very expensive, important Colossus, as you said, do not have the range.
He just now starts range.
Yeah, they were buffed, so they're not as bad as they once were without that range, but it's still definitely a problem, and he's going to want to utilize this choke to its fullest ability. I don't know about actually pushing out here. There's a lot of Marauders, a lot of Cyclones. It's only 1 Colossus, too. Where's the second one?
Yep, and here we go. The army is going to take a little bit of the fight here. He sees that Colossus. You have to be very careful about force fields, but he's got a pretty wide arc, continuing to collapse on this. Those Zealots have the +1 armor now, so they're soaking just a little bit better.
Yeah. Wouldn't mind we're involved in that fight. If they were, then maybe that's when you collapse in on the only Stalker Colossus army. But there's reinforcements anyways.
Oracle
so DnS does hold.
wants to tag. Oh, no tag.
He just wants to tag or wants to die.
I guess he wants to tag the army rather than the mines.
Yeah. Did he even realize that they were all back there? He might have actually missed that.
Is he just gonna... Oh my god.
Oh god. Oh. No. Okay, there you go. No! Oh, attempt to the counter micro.
Blinkaroni. There we go.
All right then.
Advanced ballistics on the way with +1 ship weapons, of course. With +2 ship weapons, Stalkers get 2 shots. That's the big thing with the Liberators. Of course, you can have the Liberators focus their anti-ground on the Colossus as well, which is a great way to deal with those. souL, by the way, has done a great job at taking bases. I love that he's got his 4th base set up. He's taken the 5th immediately. Oftentimes, when the Terran player loses a bit of control on the game, we see the Protoss get an extra base up or 2, and that's when life becomes so difficult because the Protoss can send out those prisms. You see like 7 or 8 charge zealots getting warped in your base. But right now, DNS moving out on the map. He's got that observer right over the enemy army. He hits him with the revelation, so he's like, okay, I think I can do something here with my Colossi. He's got his +2 attack on the way. Templar Archives following up. A couple of extra gates. He's behind on economy versus souL, though, and a big drop is on its way to his base. He needs to get something done right now.
He does see it, but is he paying attention? He also probably realizes, like, where are your medevacs? Back at home, that planetary was a little late in building, so it's not here for the fight. The aggressive blink-in does take out a couple of Liberators, but not all of them.
Yeah, Liberators saving the day there on this force. Gonna need to reposition where they are locked down. I believe advanced ballistics is done, so souL just needs to spread those rings out around the outside, and there's that big drop inside of the main base. Zealots are gonna get warped in, but there's not enough energy for a recall on the main nexus, so depowering the warp gates, and he's gonna have to recall to the natural, I guess, maybe the 3rd?
Yeah, it was the natural. That's a lot of depowering, but he's not going to get any of those important tech units. And actually, he's going to lose a very expensive army. This was like 90% Marauders.
Yeah, okay, you know what? I was going to say that was really terrible, but that last second warp-in of all those Stalkers, he killed like 3 or 4 of those right on his way over to that base. And of course, keeping those 4 Marauders alive in the corner really big. He's going to warp in 1 Phoenix to deal with that. I love that play.
He doesn't know about the 5th. He didn't send anything over there. So, I mean, the 4th, like, I actually don't blame him at all. The 4th is literally turned into a planetary. That usually means that it's like just placed down. It's actually souL being a little late to it. So I would just check for a 5th base. That's a little awkward, as that is going to be a very strong economy. souL on 72 workers, but down to that army supply, he definitely took, and even loses more as the top right medevac is taken down. That was, I mean, he got his liver cut in half, and yeah, he doesn't have any medevacs now. This is scary.
This is the opportunity. In this situation, it's really tense because you have a lot of anti-air available in this army for DNS, and those Liberators at this point would need to be focusing down the Colossus.
I didn't even notice a Banshee was built. I feel like that's a mistake.
That's you like A moving, and then you're like your starport. I built a Banshee versus Protoss.
That's not enough Liberators, I think. It was, it's an 8 count with +2 that makes it really scary for Lincoln, but it was like 5 with only +1. And this is looking good for DNS, who now knows about this 5th base.
Yep, he's caught between 2 planetary fortresses, but that repair with the Liberator set up here is still going to help. Still need to be very careful. The upgrades for souL have been good. That +2 attack versus +1 armor definitely hurts. I like this. Focus down the peripheral base. Like, there's no Liberators here. This is an easy cleanup. Let's not forget that DNS himself is still only on 4 bases, so this is just him evening the economy up to a degree.
Yeah, and there's actually a double drop going into there. It was, I guess, just Sky maybe with a pylon back through now. But the big fight goes down. The Stalkers blinking on the brand new Liberators. Take them out once again without that upgrade. The Planetary is holding strong for a very long time.
Yeah, that PF is not going down without a fight. And the Bio's actually able to get in on the Colossus right now. If those Marauders can land a few more shots. Ouchie Wawa, DNS is getting mopped up here. Ladies and gentlemen, while that big drop's continuing to well into him, on that 4th base, some of the Stalkers getting picked off is going to pick up and move to the side, but I expect a big counterattack. I do not know how DNS is going to stop souL's counter push.
That ended up being an amazing surround, trying to push his way past this Planetary. The real MVP of this game, by the way.
Give that Planetary the ring. He's earned it.
He gets the trophy at the end. Archons, they actually might be included in the fight, and a lot of this army is low, but I just don't think DNS has enough. That was too bad of a loss after being in a very good position.
Yeah, this is a really well played game by souL, bringing the pressure early on and rolling off of the momentum of that Proxy Reaper to keep the economy even. I think that's the story for this game, is the economy was so good for souL. He did not allow Protoss to get ahead with the Chrono Boost. He did not allow things to skyrocket out of control. And DNS focusing on the attack upgrades, but his attacks just not getting done what he needed to do.
Yeah, no chance of getting Storm now, I guess.
Yeah, when you're taking fights like that earlier on, where you're building you're warping in all those zealots, it's putting that Chrono Boost into the fast +3 armor for the Protoss that really gives your army the survivability that it needs, especially if you're pushing into PFs and things like SCVs are coming off the line. But oh well, the Prism's going to make its way into the main base. It's got a single zealot.
Single zealot. I guess he has 800 minerals. The army is retreating, but I don't think he knows that. Yeah, his Oracle, I think, was taken out. Oh no, it's still alive. It just isn't being used.
That's true Terran PTSD. There is a Vorp Prism with 1 zealot in my base. Send everything.
Yeah, immediately retreats.
Shut down.
That could have been 8 zealots, I guess, and his ghosts were coming out.
At that point, you become very salty if you don't have your army back there when 8 zealots warp into your base.
Exactly.
He floats, is that his factory, the bottom right?
It is, yes.
Yeah, so he sees that base. He knows what's up.
Okay, I don't know if DNS is expecting to see the factory.
Is there parking available here? Yeah, GG.
Okay, yeah.
souL takes it. Knocks out DNS after, I mean, that game, he just had control of it the whole way through, it felt like.
He did, but there was that period where he didn't have a lot of Liberators. He didn't have +2.
He didn't have his medevacs.
Yeah, he didn't have a lot of medevacs either. Like, the 4 Colossus with the ground army, if the upgrades maybe a tad better, maybe if he had focused the Planetary, maybe a couple more Mortals in the mix to actually burn that down. And that's a different game. That's not him moving past and get this awkward surround that's actually mostly SCVs on one side.
Yeah. Oh well, a tough game. DNS putting his best foot forward, but souL is going to move on to the final match of the day, where he will face the loser of our next series. Coming up, we've got our loser match. Here is today's schedule for WCS Europe so far, of course. Hero Marine versus Mana. That is our winner match. It's going to see who the first player is to make it out to the bracket stage. We'll be coming up with that after this break. Hero Marine versus Mana.